Hello and welcome back. So, two topics that I wanted to talk about today that are two basic principles for weight loss that are really, really important to address when you're trying to lose weight and develop healthy dietary patterns and healthy patterns in general in your life. These are two principles that are really, really important to address in order to make progress. I'm going to use a bit of an example to illustrate this a little bit further. So, this past weekend, we had some family come down to visit our newest little baby, and it was also one of my kids' birthdays or thereabouts. So it was a really, really fun weekend, but it was full of a lot of things that are not my typical day, right? So we ate, lots of pizza, lots of donuts, other really fun foods throughout the weekend. We just, it was a very indulgent weekend to a certain degree. It was not my typical weekend. It was not my typical eating pattern. And so I'm going to use this as an example because the first principle and the first question that I would ask a lot of people who are struggling to lose weight or people who say, I generally eat okay, but I'm struggling, I'm not able to lose weight and I'm eating really well most of the time. My first question is, does your eating pattern look the same every single day? Does it change dramatically on the weekend? So, the first principle of this is your eating pattern needs to generally be the same or look generally the same all of the time. So, if you're doing really, really well, meaning you are eating in a dietary pattern that is promoting weight loss and promoting health. So, I talk a lot about this in coaching because there are a lot of fad diets. There are a lot of people out there telling you to cut certain things out. I am not a fan of, big restriction or completely cutting out whole food groups. That being said, there are principles and basic things that you have to do in order to lose weight, which include eating in a calorie deficit. And there are ways to eat that promote your health better than others, right? And so if you are eating within that Monday to Friday, but on the weekend, you're really, really not eating like that at all, really, really off track, and you're doing that every single weekend, then, at best, you're going to end up even where you just don't lose or gain weight. And at worst, you're going to continually gain weight because you're ending up in a calorie surplus. So that's one of the very first principles. And actually, this is much harder than it sounds. So people really, really struggle with this because they'll do decently Monday to Friday. Maybe they have a job that they are consistently eating similar foods at similar times. They're sticking to their schedule, their meal planning, whatever. And then on the weekend, a spouse likes to go out to eat. You have a lot of social events. You have a lot of other things going on. You have kids that have sports. You haven't meal planned, et cetera, et cetera. And your weekend gets really off track. This is a very, very common problem for a lot of people. Monday to Friday, they do really well. Weekend is really, really crazy and out of sorts. One weekend every now and then is no big deal. One day every now and then is no big deal. But if you're consistently doing this every single weekend, then you are definitely going to have trouble sticking to a calorie deficit and you're going to have trouble losing weight. I think a lot of people have trouble seeing this realistically sometimes. So this sort of requires us to look that in the face. And this is sometimes why I have people track or log the foods that they're eating consistently every single day for a certain period of time, because sometimes we have to be able to look at this more objectively to see, yeah, Saturday and Sunday really do not look like Monday to Friday, or these days really look very differently, and I'm not eating the way that I want to be eating during those days. So that's the first principle, that you have to be really honest with yourself and you have to look at really carefully, because this is a very, 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 emphasis very, common problem and common reason why people struggle to lose weight when they feel like they're eating well most of the time. So that's principle number one. Principle number two that relates to this is, okay, so I had an indulgent weekend. What do I do with that come Monday? So a very common thing and a question that I ask people is, when you have had that kind of day, weekend, event, vacation, whatever, what do you do when you come back to normal life? Are you discouraged? Are you beating yourself up? Are you feeling like you've ruined everything? Are you starting to go down a rabbit hole or a mental cycle of, I can't do this. I have already ruined it. I am not going to lose weight. etc. If you have the kind of mentality that when you have a day or a weekend like that, that you cannot just come to Monday and say, all right, I'm going to get back to the way that I normally eat, then that's also a really common problem that people struggle with and something that you consistently need to work through. So something that in coaching is a very common conversation is how we deal with some of these things that throw us off track, because this is going to happen. All of the examples that I mentioned earlier, social events, kids events, going out to eat, things like that, they're going to happen. And you have to approach these things with a bit of honesty with yourself, but also a lot of compassion. And so if these things occur, that does not mean that you've ruined all of your progress, right? You need to be able to have the mentality that come Monday or come the next day, you're just going to get back to what you've eaten before. You're just going to get back to moving your body the way you were doing before. That one day or one weekend does not mean that you've thrown everything out of the window and all of it is ruined, right? You have to be able to have the skill set to say, it's all right, it was one weekend, I'm just going to get back to the way that I was eating before. And this can take time, right? Like sometimes you can't just wake up on Monday and magically be able to have that mindset if you've really struggled with this before. And this is part of what we work through in coaching, because it's just a really common issue that a lot of people have. The mind is really a big part of weight loss too. And so if you're struggling with something like that, one of the most important parts is becoming more aware of it and being able to call it and name it and see it for what it really is. So those are two really important principles that you have to address these two things in order to consistently lose weight. Most of the time, this is a problem for people. If this is something that you're struggling with, if you feel like you've listened to this and you're like, yep, this is me, or that you've dealt with this before and you're looking for help on this, my group coaching program is open right now. And I can give you a lot more information on that. But this is a portion of the things that we tackle in there that you have to consistently work through in order to develop a healthy dietary pattern and a lifestyle, not like something you're going to do for a couple weeks and then end up falling back into what you were doing before. Developing or working towards the lifestyle that you want to have. These are some of the things that you just have to work through, and coaching can be a really effective tool and help you through that in a way that's compassionate and not beating yourself up, and giving you the tools that you need. So if you're interested, a comment below or just reach out to me. But please, if these are things that you've worked through, or if these are things that you're currently struggling with, drop a comment below, okay?